Welcome to our last screencast on the introduction to GUI programming. We'll be talking very briefly today about menu bars and dialogues. So, menu bars and menus are the thing on the top of the frame. J-frames can have, we initially said J-frames had two things, the title bar and then the rectangle where you do all your drawing, but we now can add, we always could add a menu bar, which is this menu bar across the top that has a bunch of menus, as many menus as you want. So menu bars can have several, one or more menus in them. Menus can have several menu items, which are the items that you see under the control menu. So our menu bar has three menus: control, color, and tools. Each of the menus have some number of menu items in each menu. So it's a container inside of a container inside of a container. So, and those menus items act somewhat like buttons, and we'll talk about that now. So menu items are created by JMenu instances. To create a JMenu instance, we call the constructor JMenu with the string, which is the string that you will see in the menu item. They're similar to JButtons because they create action events when the user clicks on them. In order to handle those action events, we need to create an action listener to handle them, and we need to register that action listener on the menu item. So we created our menu item fill. We then add the action listener. That listener will then receive action events. You could check to see what the menu item was by either getting the source from the event, or you could look at the action command, which would be by default fill, so you could decide what menu item was selected. Like buttons, you can enable them and disable menu items. If they're disabled, they turn gray and the user can't click on them. And you can actually change their text. So maybe you want to change, depending on some state of your program, maybe you want to change it from fill to clear based upon some choice the user has made. You can change the text of a menu item just like you can change the text of a button. So they're very simple, and you add these menu items to, types of menu items. There are several different kinds of menu items. We have the JMenu item, which is just text. When you click on it, it's just like pressing a button. We have JTextBox menu items, which are like checkbox menu items, which are like checkboxes. So when the user clicks on them, it indicates that checkbox menu item is selected. If it's a checkbox, you can have multiple checkboxes selected. And then there's a radio button menu item that you add to a group. And when the user selects one of the radio buttons, only one of the radio buttons may be active at one time. So if the user selected on radio button 1, in this example, radio button 2 would be deselected and radio button 1 would be selected. The last sort of type of menu item is a separator. You actually add that by calling the menu, you don't create a menu item called separator. You actually call the menu's add separator method. And that gives you that nice gray line that sort of blocks up your text. So we can add items to a menu, and to create the menu, we use the constructor that takes a string, and that will be the string or the name of the menu, the string shown to the user that they would click on to drop down the menu. And then we can create our menu items. We add our action listeners. Then finally, we add the menu item to the tool or the menu itself, and they get added to. The first one added is the first thing you see. The second one added is the second thing you see. So, and it's basically sort of, you just have to add them in the order you want to see them in. You can add separators by just saying, in this example, you'd say tools menu dot add separator. And it takes no parameter, and that would draw that gray line that separates the menu items. So we've got our menus that contain menu items, and then we want to add the menus to the menu bar, which is just a container that holds menus. It doesn't have any parameters in the constructor because it doesn't have any text. So you create your menu bar, then you add your menus in the order from left to right you want them to appear, and then finally you need to add the menu bar to the frame in order for it to appear inside the frame, and we call window.set JMenuBar, and we supply it the menu bar, and that will add the menu bar to the frame. And if you've hooked up all your listeners correctly, you will have control when the user selects all the different options. I should say that I've been using examples from the textbooks Mosaic Draw, which is a very interesting program that you should probably try to get running in Eclipse and play with a little bit. It's got a very nice example of how to use interactions of the menu bars, the different listeners, how you actually detect which menu item was selected or was chosen, and how to make decisions and handle all the listeners. Very interesting and pretty cool program to play with. The next thing we want to talk about is dialog boxes. And dialog boxes are new windows that pop up, and they're useful for inputting information or providing information to the user. They have a parent window or frame, so they're associated generally with another frame or window. If that parent window closes, then the dialog boxes are automatically closed with them. Except dialogs can be modal, which means if they are modal, the dialog limits the focus, so you have to dismiss that modal dialog before you can interact with the parent frame or window. They can be modeless, which then allows you to go back to the parent frame, and if you close the parent frame, then the dialog will go away. Most dialog boxes tend to be modal. We want to limit the user's interaction when we pop up a dialog box. We often want to limit it to having them either read the message and acknowledge the message or provide some information. We don't want the program to continue running, so we often make our dialogs modal. That can have some problems though with what if the person doesn't know what the answer is and they can't dismiss the modal dialog box. They can get very frustrated. So it's up to the designer of the program, but most of the dialog boxes are modal. And Swing provides several useful dialog boxes and have ways of constructing them. I'll talk about a few now. The first one is a color chooser, and you get this all for free. You call JColorChooser show dialog. You supply the parent window. You give it the title for the window, the dialog box, and you give it a color that you start the choice of color with, and in this sense I started with the color red, and so you can see in the preview we've chosen the color red, but the user can now click on any of the color swatches and it will change. If they say OK, color C gets updated to whatever color they chose. If they say cancel, color C doesn't change, and resets the color back to whatever the initialization is. So you get all that for just calling this one show dialog. Very nice. You can choose the colors. It's a nice way to get easy colors, and you can use all these different hue, saturation, value, RGB, cayenne, magenta, yellow, and I'm not sure what K is, but there's a whole bunch of, it's a very complicated or very powerful dialog box you get by typing this one line of code. The next kind of dialog box is a JOptionPane. JOptionPane we've talked about before. That was one of the first GUI things we did. We did Hello World using a JOptionPane, and we used the show message dialog. Again, we provided the parent window and then a string. And so when we call this, we'll get this dialog box. It's a modal dialog box. The user can't do anything until they press the OK or hit the close button, and it provides some information to the user. Very nice or very powerful. You can provide information to the user. One of the issues is because it's modal, your program sort of pauses in the background. So if you're trying to do other work, this can stop the other work from happening. But it's a very powerful way. The other thing that can be a little bothersome is popping up a lot of modal dialog boxes. It's just pain. It's just a pain for the user. It's annoying. So use it with caution. The next way is you can actually get an input from the user. So let's say you want to get the user's name. You can create a show input dialog. The show input dialog, when they hit OK or cancel, if they hit OK, the contents of that text box are returned by this method. So if they typed in Fred and hit OK, name would be set to Fred. If they hit cancel, name is set to null because they didn't supply anything. And so you could check to see whether name was set or not. So you can then say, you didn't supply me a name or you did supply me a name. So you can check to see whether they hit OK or cancel based upon the result of what name is. The next kind of option pane is a confirm dialog where they can say yes, no, or cancel. Instead of returning a string, this time it returns an int, which is their answer. And the answer that it returns are these static member variables of OptionPane, static class variables of OptionPane. You get back a yes option if they click the yes button. You get a no option if they hit the no button. You get a cancel option if they hit the cancel button, and you even get a close option if they don't press any of the buttons but they hit the close and close the dialog that way. It's a very useful way to quickly get a yes/no answer from the user, and it is very easy to do. You just call show confirm dialog with the string that you want, the question you want answered. Again, very powerful, very easy to use, and is very useful. The last thing I want to talk about is how do I center a window in the screen. And the Java AWT toolkit class right here has you get the default toolkit, which gives you the toolkit for your system that's running. You can then ask what the screen size is, and that will return a dimension. And then to set the frame in the center of the screen, you take screen size width minus window get width, divide that by 2, and that's going to be where you want to put it. And then you take the height minus the height, divide by 2, and that'll put your window in the center of the screen. It's a very nice way of putting your window right smack dab in the middle of the screen in front of the user's face. We used that briefly in our graphical dice program that we did last week. That's all I have for you now. This is a quick recap of dialogs and menus and how easy they are to use in Java.